I'm Sana, I'm the authoress in distress, and you're watching my channel. Hi! For all of you who might be new, I'm Sana. I am currently in the process of editing my first novel and writing my second. I plan on publishing next fall at some point. I'm very excited about it. And this channel is here for me to share my distressed life and help somebody else maybe avoid all of those stressors by sharing any knowledge that I gather along the way on my authoring journey. I also am an avid reader, so today we are actually doing a reading video, a booktube video if you will, about books I read in August and books that I plan to read in September. So let's dive into it. Alright, so we're going to start with my August wrap-up. In August, I read 8 books. That is more books than I've read in any month this year, including January, where I think my record was 7. It has not been a great reading year for me. I'm still on track for reaching my goal of 52 books by the end of the year, so I'm still on track for that, but right now I am pretty close. I'm ahead of schedule, and this month really put me over the edge, and 8 books. I'm very excited about it. I read basically exclusively romance books this month, which is very weird for me because I am a fantasy reader predominantly. I read also a lot of nonfiction, but this month I felt really into the fantasy genre, and yeah, so all of my books are basically romance, not fantasy, are basically romance novels, and they're all, I think all of them are adult romance. Yeah, I think I have one novella in here and I'll tell you which one that is. But my first book that I read this month was Something to Talk About by Meryl Winstead. I talked about this book during my last wrap-up, so I won't go too into depth in it, but I did give it 4 stars, mostly because it could have been a 5-star read for me, but it wasn't because of the miscommunication trope, which is a trope that I hate. But if you really do like the miscommunication trope, I honestly think that you would like this book. The second book I read this month was actually my lowest rated book of the month, and it was A Lady's Honor by Renee, Dahlia. I gave this book 2.5 stars because, so I didn't hate this book. Let me be clear about that. I didn't hate it. It was an okay read. It was pretty well written. I really liked the character, the main veteran character. I don't remember her name. I suck at names, sorry. I don't remember her name, but the main character who came back from war, I really liked her character. I did not like her love interest. That was part of what kind of drove the romance down for me. I wasn't a fan. There was a black person in it, so I guess points for having a black person in a historical romance, because you can't have that very often. And then there was also the characters were interesting enough to keep me interested, but I feel like it really fell short in the plot. It felt very winding and meandering, which is an issue I have with a lot of fantasy books I've found, or a lot of romance books I've found this month while I've been reading them. It's a lot of what takes away from the scores on these books, because the plot on some of them just isn't tight enough to carry the story. But it's not impossible to have a tight plot in a romance novel, which is why I kind of expected more. I think this book lost a lot of points for me personally, because I have a lot of PTSD surrounding the topics of World War I and World War II from just some stuff in my past, and it really triggered me. So if you have anything like that, or these are like sensitive topics for you, then I would recommend just staying away from it. I thought I could handle it. I couldn't. That's on me. This book just wasn't for me. I'm sure that somebody out there, this is your favorite book, and you wouldn't be wrong. It was well written. It was a decent book. It just was not for me. So I gave it 2.5 stars. Okay, the next book that I read this last month was A Little Light Mischief by Sebastian. I read a ton of Sebastian this last month, so you're gonna be hearing that name a lot. I'm sorry about it. I'm sorry. This is just the rabbit hole I fell down. So A Little Light Mischief follows 2 women, a noblewoman. She's kind of a disgraced pastor's daughter, I think, who has been taken in as a ward and like a helper and a companion by this rich lady in London. And also our second main character is that rich lady's maid, and they end up striking up a romance. It's pretty cute. This is a novella, so it was really short, but my one complaint with this book is that I wish that the author had just committed to making it like a short novel, or letting the book extend and the story extend, because it really felt like it could have benefited from having more time to explore the characters and the plot. And there was a little bit of a heist nugget thrown in there, which I freaking love a good heist. So I was expecting more of that, and there definitely wasn't more of that. So if you're expecting this to be a heist novel, or a novel about lady thieves, you don't go into it with that intention, because you'll be disappointed. I gave this book 3 stars. I enjoyed the read. I just wish there had been more of it. I really liked the characters, especially the character of Molly. Alright, so the next book I read this last month was Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. I loved this book. I loved it so much, y'all. Oh my god. I gave this book 5 stars. See, I was not expecting to give this book 5 stars. I was like, maybe this is a 4-star read. You know, like throughout it I was like, yeah, this is probably a 4-star read. But then I got to the end, and this book is 5 stars, okay? I loved it so much. I enjoyed reading it. It's so interesting. I love our main character. I love that it isn't I love that it isn't dual point of view, dual POV, because I really feel like it would have lost something by putting us in the head of the romantic interest in this book. I do not remember anybody's names, again, sorry about that, but our main character is a little gay boy in, I think, London, and he is the bastard son, or he's the estranged son of a rock star, and he was raised by his mother, who was this rock star in the 70s, and she's kind of, you know, she's living her eclectic life now, and we love that for her. But yeah, so his father is making a comeback after lots of years of debauchery and rakish behavior, and he's making a comeback onto the public stage again, and because of that, his estranged son, our main character, is under a lot of scrutiny because of things that come out in the newspapers and stuff. He ends up losing his job and kind of estranging his friends and falling into like a really deep depression, and ends up working this job he doesn't really like, surrounded by people he isn't really fond of. But then he has to find a date for this work function so that he doesn't lose his job, and he needs to find a good gay. I just love it. He has to find a good gay to accompany him to this work event to prove that he is not the rake that his father is. And he ends up with this just uptight barrister, and it's just delightful. So they end up having to fake date, and because it's a romance novel, obviously it turns into a real romance. But I didn't know how I felt about this love interest, and that was why I was going to give it 4 stars. But in the end, like learning his backstory and stuff like that and being able to see it, it really put into, like, this author did such a good job talking about like the way people are raised, like the nurture aspect of psychology, like it forms how you react to things, and she did such a good job showing that in her characters that it just, like, the psychology of this book is chef's kiss, so freaking perfect. I loved it. I feel like they could have talked about veganism less, but that was basically my only gripe with the whole book, which, like, I'm willing to overlook. Like, 5 stars, hands down. All right, the next book I read, Two Rogues Make a Right by Sebastian. Now, this is actually the 3rd book in a trilogy, and I did not know that going into it, so that was a mistake. But I did end up reading all the other books in the trilogy, and that is why I have so many Sebastian books this month to talk about. So, Two Rogues Make a Right is about this brother, one of 3, which the whole trilogy is about, this brother, and he is an ex-sailor who was on this ship that some shit went down on. So he ends up having to come back to London, and he ends up wanting to help his friend who helped him through a very hard time, and basically kidnaps him and takes him to a cottage. And it is basically just a cottagecore book about 2 gay men who fall in love, and and they're best friends, and it's friends to lovers, and it's not usually a trope I really like, but it was done well and I enjoyed it. Highly recommend, especially if you're into the cottagecore aesthetic, if you're looking for some characters that you love, like you can just love, because they're so lovable. Like Will is so lovable, and for the longest time I didn't like Martin, and that's what kind of brought down the rating for me on this. And I also wish there's a little bit of miscommunication or like lack of communication in this book, which kind of frustrated me as well. So yeah, if you don't like the miscommunication trope, it might get in the way for you, but I really did enjoy this book. It was a fun read. The plot kind of meanders again, like a lot of these romance books, but I was willing to overlook it because the vibe was cool. I was here for it. I ended up giving Two Rogues a Right 4 stars because I enjoyed it. That other star was lost for plot and Martin, so 4 stars. Okay, the next book I read was It Takes Two to Tumble. It Takes Two to Tumble by Sebastian. I gave this book 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much as Will and Martin's story in Two Rogues Make a Right, but I enjoyed it. This is about Will's brother, Ben, who is like the perfect angel child. He's the eldest of all their brothers, and he ended up becoming a vicar in like their hometown, basically, their home village community. Ended up becoming the vicar of that town, and he ends up, after a bunch of nannies quit or are driven away by these monstrous children, like these just demonic children at this manor, he ends up being volunteered for the job of making sure they don't get into any trouble before their father shows up. Their father is a sailor, or a captain, a sea captain, and he's returning soon, so they don't have time to find another nanny. They don't really need to because their father's returning, so Ben ends up getting nominated for this job, and he does a great job. I love him. One of my favorite parts of this book is his interactions with the children. I find it really wholesome and enjoyable, especially because Ben uses a lot of his knowledge from being an older brother, which is really a really realistic depiction of that, of being the oldest sibling. And the sea captain returns and love ensues, and I love it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good time. There was not a lot of plot, which is why this one got a lower rating than Two Rogues Make a Right, but I still kind of enjoyed the story and the characters, and I enjoyed the characters enough that it kind of made up for the meandering of the plot. I've been using that word a lot, but it's kind of how I feel about a lot of these romance books. They kind of wander, and I'm not really about that usually, but I kind of need something a little bit mindless, so this kind of worked for me. 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it. Good job, Sebastian. And my last Sebastian book of this wrap-up, I read so many books this month, y'all. My last Sebastian book of this wrap-up is A Gentleman Never Keeps Score by Sebastian, and it is the third book in the trilogy. It's actually, I think, supposed to be the first one that I did not read. No, it's the second one. This would be the second one. But I read these all out of order. It was so hard for me to figure out which one was supposed to go where because I had already read the last one first. But anyway, this one is about the middle brother? Yeah, I think the middle brother, Henry, and he is just this fabulous little boy, and he ended up moving to London and was living in this flat left to him by Martin's dad, who was kind of dick. He was not kind of a dick. He was entirely a dick. I hate him. I hate that man. Yeah, so it involves a lot of talk of sexual abuse. So if you are triggered by that, then I don't recommend this book for you. But I do think that his trauma reactions are handled really, really well. And this whole book takes off because Henry is outed in the streets of London, but there's no proof, so he is able to carry on with his life, but he is kind of deemed this social pariah, and he is dealing with the fallout of his social circle, which is like the one thing that he really had and really took pride in, and it makes me really sad. But because of this, he ends up running into a man named Sam, and he's a black fella, and that is partially, like, I love this book because it explores the race aspect, because there isn't a black main character, which, like, thank God, finally. Like, I've read, it's so white, y'all. So he ends up falling in with Henry, and romance ensues, and it's pretty cute, and they end up falling in line with each other because they want to steal a painting. So it's another heist aspect. But this one, I mean, it has less, I mean, it's still not a heist novel by any means, but it has a little bit more, and I really appreciated Cat Sebastian on this one because she put, it has a very solid plot. It's a solid plot. I enjoyed it. I love characters. I love them both. And yeah, I have very few gripes with this book. I didn't think it was perfect, but I think it could have been worse. So 4 stars for me. I enjoyed it. I thought it was well done. All right, the last book that I read last month. I know I've been talking forever. I'm sorry. The last book I read last month was Conventionally Yours by Annabeth Albert. I gave this book 4 stars. I feel like it would have been 5 stars if it hadn't focused so heavily on a card game that I don't care about. Like, my bad, I'm sorry. I don't play Magic the Gathering. I'm a D&D gal, okay? D&D for life. I don't play Magic. Sorry. It revolves around this game, this card game that is clearly based off of Magic the Gathering, and it's delightful. So these 2 boys, or like this group of boys and this older man, are supposed to go on this road trip to a convention, and our 2 main characters have to take this road trip as opposed to flying to the convention for various reasons. Our main character, Will, I think his name is Will. I could be wrong. I think it's Will. He ends up having to ride in the car because he does not have the money for a plane ticket because he is really struggling financially right now. And then our other main character, his father died in a plane accident, so he really just isn't okay with planes. So they both end up having to take the car, but they hate each other. They butt heads. They just don't like each other. They argue every time they see each other. It's a rivalry. I love it. I feed off of this chaotic energy. And they're supposed to go with this guy Jasper, I think his name is, and this older man who's a professor, but an accident happens and the older gentleman cannot go, and then something else happens and Jasper has to drop out, and they're trapped in a car together for a cross-country road trip, and they have to get to know each other, and romance ensues, and it's delightful. It's enemies to lovers road trip. There's only one bed sort of nonsense, and I love it. And they have to compete against each other in these card games, and they learn to respect each other, and it has neurodivergent rep, and we're just here for it, you know? I love it so much. I just did. So 4 stars. 4 stars for me to Conventionally Yours. Finally, let's get into the books I am planning on reading in September, and I'll be super quick about this because I know I've taken up too much of your time already. Okay, I'm gonna get my laptop in here because once more, I have the memory of goldfish. So my TBR for September, I'll just go down the list here. I am halfway through a book called A Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. I hear Olivia Waite is a big name in the romance genre. I am just breaking into the romance genre, so I would not know, but I'm kind of enjoying this book so far. It is about 2 women-loving women, and they end up together. One of them is an astronomer, and the other is her patron, and they are trying to get this astronomer's translation of this French book about astronomy published. And yeah, it's just 2 lovely ladies loving each other and taking down the patriarchy, and so far I'm here for it. So yeah, we love it here. All right, the next one is The Falling in Love Montage by Ciara Smyth. Smyth, I don't know how you say it. I think it's Smyth. And this is the one I meant to read last month but didn't get to because I kept reading adult books. But this is a YA female romance. I think it sets place in a carnival. I don't know really much about it. I try to go into my books blind, but I think I like this one, so here we go. The next one is Mortal Gods by Kendare Blake. This is a sequel to Anti-Goddess by Kendare Blake, and the Anti-Goddess series follows mishmash of characters, one of which is Athena, and they are set in the modern day, and the gods are dying and warring against each other, and each god is dying from a very specific thing, and it's terrifying. And I love it. So Athena and Hermes have to go and try to gather some heroes and other gods and try to figure out what's happening to all the gods, also while they're being hunted down by other gods. And it's just a romp of a good time. And as somebody who loves Greek mythology, I find these books endlessly entertaining. I don't know, they're kind of just the YA paranormal nonsense that I love with a little dash of gore, and we're here for that. I ended up buying the trilogy of the Lies of Locke Lamora. I think it's called the Gentleman Bastard series, and I'm going to be reading the Lies of Locke Lamora this upcoming month because I am in the mood for a heist novel, because I have been teased with fake ass heist novels for the last month. So I'm gonna have a real heist, okay? It's gonna happen. Yeah, so I hear that it has a charismatic main character. It is, I think, fantasy. I'm pretty sure it's fantasy and not historical fiction. Pretty sure. And they have to steal something. And that's all I need to know. I like fantasy heist novel. Give it to me. Mine. Next book I'm going to be reading, I'm actually listening to it on audiobook. I have 2 audiobooks that I'm going to be getting from the library in a couple weeks, so I'm very excited about that. The first is by S.A. Chakraborty, and it is The City of Brass. I have the 3rd book in paper, so I'm trying to listen to the 1st book. I'm going to be trying to finish that. I actually got 16% of the way through the recording last time I had it, but I didn't end up finishing it before the time was up, so I am getting it again to see if I can finish it this time. But I was kind of enjoying it. I don't know, I wasn't in a huge fantasy mood when I was listening to it before. Hopefully I'll be able to get through it this time and move on to the 2nd book. Next and last book on this list is Where Dreams Descend by Janelle, and this is also an audiobook that I will be getting from my library as soon as the book drops, because it has been on my wait list and my hold list since, I don't know, like 2 months ago. I literally put this on hold so far in advance that I am the first person on the list to get it. So I'm very excited about that. I'm going to be listening to it on audiobook. I think I don't even remember what it's about anymore. I think it's like show business. I think for some reason my thought is like Moulin Rouge, like the musical. I don't know if that's right, but it looks sultry and I'm here for it. So I am looking forward to getting into that. So y'all, that is my video for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry we talked only about romance books this month. Hopefully I'll have a little bit more variety next month. If you've read any of these books, feel free to chat with me about them. My Instagram and my website are linked below, and I see all of the things, so feel free to follow me there. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the little bell and, you know, all that nonsense. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, debates, fears, anxieties, pet stuff, issues, complaints, irritations, leave them down there in the comment section down below and we'll talk about them. I upload on Thursdays. School has been starting, so it's been kind of patchy for me. I'm trying my best here to keep everything in line, but we'll see. It depends. It's really hard. I will talk to you guys next week, and happy reading. Stay safe out there.